Alright, plan B.
Hey everybody. So, in the directories of the legendary encyclopedia site Wikipedia, there exists a largely unnoticed page entitled Long-Term Abuse. The page is not an article, like so many of the site's resources are. It's a notice board, part of Wikipedia's internal infrastructure maintained by thousands upon thousands of editors, and used to uphold the integrity of the site through various means. But long-term abuse, in particular, reads more like an FBI Most Wanted listing than a reference page for the maintenance of Wikipedia. And this is largely due to the fact that, well, it kind of is. Wikipedia is probably the last place you'd expect to see drama or conflict, but you'd be surprised how deep these things really go on the site. Long-term abuse, and other pages like it, offer a glimpse into the strange and unpredictable world of Wikipedia warfare, and describe, in neatly categorized, well-documented format, some of the most bizarre individuals to ever crawl the pages of the free encyclopedia. These are the cryptids of Wikipedia. Now, you probably don't all really need an explanation of what Wikipedia is, but humor me for a minute as I give a very brief history of the site to provide at least a little context. Now, the site wasn't exactly the first of its kind. Throughout the experimental years of the 1990s, a series of short-lived online encyclopedias like Interpedia were launched before dissolving into the swiftly moving waters of the rapidly expanding internet. A truly resilient site wouldn't come till 2000, when dot-com-era web portal company Bomis launched the site Nupedia. Bomis, which had previously found success offering distribution of erotica, search engines for erotica, and premium subscriptions for erotica, launched Nupedia as a free online encyclopedia that accepted user contributions for articles, an initiative largely credited to Bomis CEO Jimmy Wales. But Nupedia was far from perfect. It operated using a two-stage article creation system. Users were allowed to submit articles on any topic they'd like, but in order to be hosted on the site, these articles would need to be approved through a rigorous peer review process, which was, to put it nicely, really slow. By the end of its first year, the site had approved a grand total of 20 articles, and this wasn't exactly growing at any significant rate. And this is where Nupedia's editor-in-chief, Larry Sanger, came into play. Sanger brought to the table the relatively new concept of a wiki, which had been developed in the mid-90s by programmer Ward Cunningham. Cunningham had created the first wiki site in 1994, with the goal of establishing an online database characterized by collaborative contribution and ease of editing. These were concepts that Sanger believed would allow a site like Nupedia to reach its full potential. In January 2001, Wikipedia was launched by Bomis as a side project to Nupedia, although it would quickly surpass the latter by the end of the year. And the rest, as we know, is history. Now, the wiki concept is what really matters here. While it wasn't new by the time Wikipedia adopted it, it became so successful on the site that the two eventually became synonymous. It relies heavily on the concept of any user being able to propose any edit they see fit, and counts on the fact that through discussion, research, and revision, the information on a page will refine itself to become as accurate as possible. But of course, there are some inherent issues. By definition, a wiki is editable by anyone and everyone. If you've ever had a teacher give you flack for citing a wiki, this is why. Other users can modify it, revise it, or remove it entirely. But by nature, a wiki has no defined leaders or fact-checkers. It's essentially a bubble of controlled chaos that survives only through the diligent work of users who volunteer their time to make sure information is factual and accurate. These editors have a difficult and probably really annoying job, and it only gets harder when you have to contend with those uncommon but particularly resilient users who have decided instead to volunteer their time towards tipping the scales ever so slightly in the direction of chaos. On that note, let's talk about long-term abuse. The page has a very simple purpose. It hosts a regularly updated list of individuals, both active and inactive, who have shown repeated interest in vandalizing articles, harassing other users, and generally sowing discontent. Anybody can visit an article and fuck around with the details. Your changes will probably be reverted within 5 minutes, and nothing will really come of it. But these strange individuals are on another level entirely. They devote large amounts of time and effort to making repeated, usually very specific changes to articles, and they'll engage in deception, impersonation, and ban avoidance to keep these exploits going. The reasoning behind these actions could be anything, if it's even known at all. And these, as you may have guessed, are the cryptids of Wikipedia. And in our program for the evening, we'll be taking a look at a few of the most interesting. Speaking of which, our first category for the night are the most superficial of the group, those whose aims aren't catastrophic but whose behaviors are nonetheless erratic and potentially a problem. We begin with the strange case of the dog and rapper Vandal. The account's activity dates back to October of 2013. Its various IPs geolocate to the Pennsylvania area, and its activities are, well, pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Also known as John Kwasinski, the dog and rapper Vandal has spent close to a decade making minor, almost unnoticeable changes to a wide variety of pages themed around dog breeds and various rappers. The edits they make are often so small and insignificant they go unnoticed for a considerable amount of time. Things like adding non-existent albums to rappers' discographies, adding various credits to rappers' info boxes that weren't necessarily true, tweaking dates very slightly, and changing the listed weights or characteristics of numerous dog breeds for some unknown reason. The user's edits would usually be accompanied by a short message reading something along the lines of, "Please accept," "Please stop," "Discussed on my talk page," or "I hate you." What made the dog and rapper Vandal's activities even more bizarre was the fact that they'd often go a good bit of time doing genuine, honest edits before relapsing and going off on dog and rapper pages again before being banned. But unless you're an avid dog breeding enthusiast or want perfectly factual information about the birth dates of rappers, the exploits of this user probably haven't affected you too much. The same can probably be said of the Chipmunks Vandal. Dating back even further to mid-2010, this Vandal had motives even more particular than those of our previous subject. Their sole purpose on the site, with a few exceptions, was to add information about Alvin and the Chipmunks covers to the wiki pages of various songs, and otherwise spread extremely detailed information about Alvin and the Chipmunks, where it wasn't necessarily needed. For an idea of just how prolific they were, during a single day in February 2011, they updated close to 100 individual pages with chipmunk-related info, including mentions of covers for Tub Thumping, California Dreaming, 9 to 5, Satisfaction, and countless others. Their knowledge of Alvin and the Chipmunks covers, while genuinely really impressive, wasn't something Wikipedia editors found particularly appealing, and since 2015 they've officially been marked as a person of interest, despite their activities slowing down in late 2021. Some users in this category, however, are more methodical. When you've got nothing really going on, I suppose screwing around on Wikipedia can be an interesting way to spend your time, as seems to be the case with one Dusty8686. A more recent case, beginning as recently as 2015 and theorized to be centered in Lee County, Florida, Dusty became quickly infamous for abusing and gaming a number of Wikipedia's internal systems to perform numerous minor changes on a vast array of articles. Edits were almost exclusively very small scale and almost unnoticeable if left alone, changing the game end time of FNAF from 6 AM to 6:30 PM, adding bees to the list of world's deadliest animals, and changing shadow Pokemon to hell Pokemon in the Pokemon Go article. Some of these are honestly so small I don't even understand why they went through the trouble of changing them in the first place, like changing the number of levels in an obscure Japanese puzzle game from 100 to 70. But minor as they were, the changes were eventually noticed and an investigation was started to track Dusty down. But like some of the other users we'll discuss tonight, Dusty was a little more clever than expected. They learned to exploit autoconfirm, a Wikipedia system that automatically gives users higher permissions once they have an account for 4 days and edit 10 articles. Dusty was known to game this system by making a series of tiny edits on Wikipedia's sandbox page every time they created a new account. And this is my cue to talk about sock puppets. For all intents and purposes, a sock puppet is an alt, an account created by a user for any number of reasons that they'd prefer most people think is actually a completely different user. The concept of an alt has been around since the dawn of the message board, but as sock puppets on Wikipedia, they take on some unique characteristics. Due to the site's collaborative nature, sock puppets aren't just for ban evasion. They can be used to make multiple edits on the same page to avoid detection, to revert edits from other users without making it seem like the original user was at fault. Hell, they're even used to make it seem like the original user, or the sock master, was correct the entire time. If I was really strongly convinced that the page for Markiplier should state that his favorite food is cracked walnuts, I can just create 10 socks who exist only to agree with me, create 10 more who revert other people's edits when they try to change it, and maybe a few that I can use to pretend to disagree with myself so that I can then prove them wrong. Why is this important? Well, a lot of the individuals on the long-term abuse list got to where they are today by very heavily abusing creation of socks, and in general they just make potential vandals a lot harder to root out. Case in point, Dusty8686 was remarkably hard to track down, due to a combination of jumping between a wide variety of articles and periodically creating new socks, which they'd then auto-confirm using the 10 edits trick and use to make very slight modifications to random pages. Yeah, admittedly nothing we've discussed so far is really anything to write home about. But what about when a vandal originates from outside the site itself and attempts to bring something in? The year is 2011, and in the quiet evening hours of May 2nd, a series of minor changes are rapidly made to the article for English singer-songwriter Robert Palmer. The changes make this strange claim that Palmer's partner at the time of his death was one Geraldine Edwards. This is, to put it lightly, not true. Palmer's actual partner at the time of his death was former waitress Mary Ambrose, a fact confirmed in a number of publications in the years following. But this user, operating out of a San Diego IP, was convinced otherwise. The Geraldine Edwards hoaxer, as they came to be known, actually went undetected for over 2 years, save for a few small reversions of their edits, and it wasn't until 2013 that the full extent of the hoax would actually be uncovered and undone by editors. At this point, however, it was also found that the hoax extended a lot further than the boundaries of Wikipedia. Article after article after article on every site from Oregon Music News to Ultimate Guitar to AOL Answers featured a barrage of comments, seemingly from the same time period the hoaxer became active, sharing their valuable personal insights on Robert Palmer's relationship with Geraldine Edwards. An entire fictional narrative had seemingly been created by one unidentified user, who had then spent the next 3 years traveling to tens if not hundreds of sites with hundreds of sock puppets to spread the hoax. The changes on Wikipedia were undone, but they were really just the tip of the iceberg, as the damage, in a few cases, had already been done. A handful of sites from Last.fm to numerous personal wikis and blogs had picked up the information from the Wikipedia page and spread it elsewhere. And even to this day, you can still find the lingering effects of the hoax scattered across the internet. This, if you couldn't tell, is the true underlying purpose of the long-term abuse page. People trust Wikipedia, and when users are determined to alter it, they run the risk of altering public perception of a particular thing. Now, of course, when dealing with the users in this category, it ain't really a problem. Nobody's going to be particularly affected by the giant schnauzer being listed as a stand-up comedian. No, the real issues come with the users who take things a step further. I.B. Wright, active as early as September 2006, is one such user. Operating since the very early days of the site and generally understood to be located in the United Kingdom, Wright's interests revolve primarily around electrical systems, railways, and aerospace engineering, generally choosing to alter existing information or straight up delete statements on pages of this sort with little to no explanation. Things would escalate when Wright was actually called out. Any user who dared to revert their edits or bring up their conduct elsewhere would be subject to Wright harassing the user virtually non-stop, using numerous sock accounts to revert or change every edit that user would make, a process known as edit warring, often leaving comments attempting to frame the user as unreliable, untrustworthy, or having a quote 100% history of disruptive edits. Unlike most users on this list who edited in secret and would have preferred to be left alone, Wright would invariably go on the offensive almost instantaneously, presumably with the intention of beating any potential enemies to the punch by accusing them first. Throughout the midst of the 2010s, Wright became obsessed with two users in particular, Burnin' Through the Sky and another whose name I won't attempt to pronounce, stalking their talk pages and using their army of socks to create the illusion that the two users had angered the community in some way. As a side note, reading these old talk page logs is way more entertaining than it has any right to be. This dude gets heated and starts using words like hoodlum and tendentious. But this is where Wright's dealings would finally come to light, as attacking two normal users who were, for all intents and purposes, just ordinary people trying to help out on Wikipedia isn't exactly a good way to gain approval from the community. Wright's game was discovered and they were quickly banned, although they continued to evade the ban as recently as 2021. In the later years of Wright's activity, around late 2014, a user named Alex Smithson began their own strange little campaign. Since the creation of Alex's first account, they've spent a considerable amount of time creating pages, editing existing articles, and harassing Wikipedia editors with the seemingly singular goal of promoting several obscure Italian families and attempting to link them to ancient European royalty. Believed to be located in or around Milan, Alec possesses what appears to be an obsession with the Italian Natoli, Biodi, and Poli families. They've historically created mountains of articles detailing the biographies of otherwise non-notable members of these families, and making additions to existing pages to make it seem as if numerous members of these families were legendary rulers, craftsmen, or other historical figures, most notably attempting to link the Natoli family to existing French royals. Alec went so far as to create entire detailed articles listing the supposed lineage of the Natolis, and in the process became even more infamous due to their extensive use of sources that were either extremely dubious or just straight up non-existent, with the user extensively editing wiki data entries to provide evidence for their claims. After several months of activity, during which they made use of various socks and shifting IPs, and also picked fights with several well-established Wikipedia editors, Alec was finally banned and identified as a person of interest, although this hasn't stopped their behavior. In the following years, Alec has been permanently banned on over 10 different localized Wikipedias, but continues their crusade to promote various Italian families, even to this day. Similarly motivated but with largely different interests is the user It's Lassie Time. A legendary and prolific sockmaster, Lassie Time's activity dates back to 2008, and they began their erratic behavior almost immediately. The standard pattern was for Lassie Time to create a small handful of sock accounts at a time, which they then used to create colossal amounts of articles with little to no actual research or extraneous information that wasn't really needed. Although their behavior was noticed almost immediately, Lassie Time was always incredibly quick to create new accounts every time a ban was issued. They were unbelievably prolific in this regard, with over 200 confirmed sock accounts created since 2008, many of which were sleeper accounts, created months or years in advance to be used in case of emergency. But of course, this is all stuff we've heard before, just on a much larger scale. Lassie Time became infamous, not necessarily for this behavior, but for what came next. When Lassie Time was criticized in pretty much any way, they wouldn't so much lash out aggressively like other users mentioned tonight, but a penchant for unusual behavior was revealed. You see, not only did Lassie Time possess over 200 socks, they treated each as if it were its own individual person, each with its own character or persona. On some accounts, they played the character of a young girl editing articles on rodeo. On others, they played an elderly woman writing articles on ballet, and the list goes on. When Lassie Time's bizarre edits were reversed or called out, they'd take on the persona and try to draw pity from other users, usually in the form of drawn-out pleas and complaints on notice boards, although aggressive attacks were also known to happen. And strangest of all, they'd have their socks interact. This person RP'd very poorly as their own mother / their own daughter to scold users for reversing their edits, and similar stunts on a fairly regular basis. And this went on for literal years, with socks being incredibly difficult to find thanks to Lassie's tendency to use sleeper accounts, making check user essentially useless. Oh yeah, wait, check user. You may have been wondering how exactly all these sock accounts are found out. After all, on a site as big and active as Wikipedia, it seems pretty damn difficult to tell if any two given accounts belong to the same person. This is where check user comes into play. Check user is a special tool created by Wikipedia staff that essentially allows one to identify if any two users have been making edits from similar IP addresses or ranges. This is extraordinarily useful if it's found that two disruptive users are being disruptive in kind of the same way, and editors want to find out if they might just be the same person. Now, it should be noted that check user isn't just something that anybody can pull up and use. It handles sensitive info, namely the personal IP addresses of Wikipedia users, so it isn't a privilege given out to anyone who registers an account. Check user is exclusive, and I mean exclusive. There are, at the moment, exactly 48 editors who have check user credentials, and it's historically been up to this small subset of people to run checks on Wikipedia's most notorious vandals in the hopes of finding a lead. And most of the time, it's pretty damn effective. A solid number of the users on this list and beyond have had their socks pinned down almost exclusively using this tool. But of course, it's not perfect. Case in point, the full extent of its Lassie Time socks were not discovered for a considerable amount of time, and still may not have been fully discovered to this day, largely due to the fact that they would create accounts, sometimes years in advance, just to lie in wait, completely inactive and undetectable by check user, until Lassie Time needed them. Further complicating things is the fact that, as documented on their page, it's theorized that circa 2016, the account and its various socks came under the control of a different user, evidenced by a sudden change in behavior in which more accounts were created, less overall edits were made per account, and said edits were almost entirely destructive in nature. It's even thought that both the original Lassie Time and the 2016 counterpart may have been active simultaneously, but it would seem there haven't been any major updates since December 2021, so it can tentatively be said that the account is at least dormant. It's unclear if the same can be said for Supreme Genghis Khan, also known as Genghis Khan Supreme, Genghis Khan the Great, Super Genghis Khan, and various other Genghis Khan-related monikers. Khan showed up seemingly from nowhere during the tumultuous year of 2016 with no other goal than to cause chaos and destruction everywhere they went. As you may have guessed by their username, Khan is undoubtedly one of the most outwardly aggressive users on this list. They were almost always on the offensive, wiping entire pages, replacing them with massive dumps of images and text in all caps, and spamming both articles and user talk pages with some not so nice statements about other users. Notable edits include placing Osama bin Laden or Kim Jong-il in places they weren't supposed to be, claiming pages for the Mongol Empire, and adding 2 million bytes of text to a notice board page, reportedly crashing the browsers of users who tried to access it. Khan was entirely unafraid of Wikipedia staff uncovering their work, and would quite often sign their acts of destruction with their original username, getting banned and then immediately swinging back around with a new sock puppet. In just a few short months of 2016, Khan would create over 190 confirmed socks before a site-wide ban was declared on any activity from their end. As of today, their whereabouts and activities are entirely unknown, and Khan was last spotted roughly 2.5 years ago in late 2020. The case remains open, although I'm certain many would like to see it closed. So by now, we've covered all the bases for the most part. Meticulous but easily pissed off editors, hoaxers, self-promotion specialists, standard garden variety trolls, and other small-scale agents of chaos. But what about someone who is just genuinely insane? Brad Watson is a 63-year-old man residing in Miami, Florida. In the waking hours of the day, Brad performs as a freelance musician in various venues across the state, but as night falls, he takes to Wikipedia to type up some of the craziest shit you've ever read. Brad believes himself to be the reincarnation of various historical figures, including but not limited to Benjamin Franklin, Albert Einstein, Plutarch, and Jesus Christ. His interests span far and wide, but seem to generally orbit around the concepts of ancient history, extraterrestrials, biblical study, and physics. Brad will haunt pages that pertain to any of these topics and flood them with bizarre theories and pseudoscience. He'll frequently take the discussion to the talk page of any article he happens upon, and almost universally attempts to link the topic at hand to the number 7, or less frequently, the number 4. Brad's strange unified conspiracy centers around the biblical 7 seals, which he believes to have deciphered and interpreted as what he calls beyond Einstein theories, theories he believes will have some profound effect on the universe. Now, on Wikipedia, Brad is quickly and efficiently dealt with, his edits reverted and his accounts banned the instant he makes a talk page about thoughts being able to travel back in time. But outside Wikipedia, Brad continues to run rampant. He has a LinkedIn where he references being Jesus Christ as his one and only piece of work experience. And from this page and numerous self-promo edits he's made on Wikipedia, we can take a jump to his personal blog. 7seals.blogspot.com is a genuinely fascinating stream of consciousness info dump in the same vein as Gene Ray's Time Cube. Brad Watson's unified theory draws in everything from reincarnation to American history to Bible verses to causality, cosmology, COVID-19. It just keeps going. And the blog is just the start. As far as I know, nobody's actually done a real search on Brad, but if you do, you'll find his activity dates back considerably farther than 2012, his first Wikipedia appearance. In 2002, at age 42, Brad was interviewed by the Orlando Sentinel talking about performing music in space, and even back then he was already discussing his beyond Einstein theories. Brad has written a 74-page booklet on his theories, a precursor to which he apparently hand-delivered to the White House gates in 1998. Brad's obsession goes way, way back, and his activities on Wikipedia are really just the tip of the iceberg. And the funniest part is, Brad wasn't even lying about being a professional musician. That's actually his job. Here's him banging out the tunes on a xylophone in 2018 for his self-titled music expo in Fort Lauderdale. And as far as everyone knows, Brad remains active to this day, back to his daily grind of fucking with the 7 Seals article as recently as January of this year. And I think that's a fitting place to move on to our final section for the night. How are you guys doing? You having a good day? At the time of writing, I have absolutely no idea how long this video is going to go on for. So if you'd like, take this as an opportunity to take a short break if you need it. Get some food, take a little walk around. Right now, I'm eating some extremely dry pretzels that I got on sale at BJ's Wholesale, and I'm not really feeling too good about them. But we must persist in the face of adversity. So with that being said, let's get into something a little more serious. Now, the overwhelming bulk of Wikipedia editors edit in good faith. The editors I've described tonight make up only a tiny portion of the site's user base, and even amongst these unusual site members, the vast majority, while potentially annoying and difficult to clean up after, are ultimately harmless. But for a select few, a small subset of a small subset, intentions may be far more sinister. The site wikiexperts.com was founded circa 2010 by company president Alex Konanikin and remains up to this day. The site's homepage paints a picture of a Wikipedia landscape that's threatening and confusing, potentially extremely daunting for any first-time editor. A high-profile individual or company with its services or products listed on the site would always be at risk of having edits made to their pages that could damage their reputation. Wikipedia is, after all, an extremely popular and highly respected source of information on the modern internet, and in many ways a Wikipedia page can act as a sort of pseudo-PR campaign if you want to look at it that way. The homepage of Wiki Experts describes this and more, and, of course, offers their own brand of solution. Why waste energy creating or maintaining your own page when you can pay Wiki Experts to do it for you? As you might expect, workers under the employ of Wiki Experts ran into trouble pretty soon after they started. Editors began to take notes of edits being made, and upon discovering the site for themselves, raised understandable concerns that the paid editing racket was a flagrant violation of Wikipedia's conflict of interest rules. You see, conflict of interest, or COI, refers to a set of rules on the site that essentially prohibit individuals or people affiliated with them from editing pages in ways that would benefit them or hurt those opposed to them. Essentially, if I had a wiki page, which I don't and probably never will, I couldn't just edit it to say that I invented agriculture because, well, first of all, it's probably not true, but secondly, I'd be helping myself out by doing it. The same goes for if I paid someone to do it for me, and this is where Wiki Experts ran into trouble. As far as anyone could tell, they were a structured organization operating quietly and paying editors to make unknown changes without disclosing who was paying them or why. This came to a head in 2013 when Alex K himself descended from the sky to clear the company's name with such classic rebuttals as, "The site has offered no support for corporate grievances," and "Wikipedia is discriminating against PR firms." Astoundingly, this didn't turn people's opinions around, and in October of that year they were essentially vote-kicked by the Wikipedia populace, with anyone affiliated with Wiki Experts being banned from editing indefinitely. Unfortunately, the site remains up and active to this day, and it's entirely likely they're still working around the clock accepting paid editing contracts. They've just gotten better at hiding it. Oh, and in case you're wondering, Alex remains active to this day as well, and you may be shocked to discover that he launched a cryptocurrency in February of last year. So, yeah, moving on. In 2007, a British man named Michael Coombs would create a Wikipedia account under the name Mike V. For a handful of years in the late 2000s, Michael took part in the Wikipedia community as a non-disruptive editor, making a handful of small changes and sharing snippets of personal info in his contributions. But a rapid and erratic string of edits beginning in February of 2009, notably on articles related to the concept of race, raised some suspicions, and it was at this point discovered that Michael Coombs was not at all what he seemed. In just a few short months during 2009, Mike had been radicalized and had become a staunch supporter of the alt-right. He had become active on the neo-Nazi sites Stormfront and the Daily Stormer, and would make a habit of attempting to bring these new beliefs back to Wikipedia. Mike would advocate for hereditarianism, scientific racism, anti-Semitism, and far more, persistently editing pages related to them all throughout 2009. This conflict intensified in 2010, when Mike began attacking other editors for altering his edits advocating for eugenics, and once his history of bigotry was uncovered, Mike was officially banned. He would go on to create somewhere between 140 to 260 socks after the ban, and would further escalate things by creating a thread on Stormfront inviting white supremacists to raid the site and cause damage, earning him an even more sinister reputation. Mike has remained extremely active both on Wikipedia and off it, over time growing to become one of the most notorious alt-right figures on the modern internet. Word to the wise, if you're not a fan of depravity and vicious hatred, I'd recommend not doing research on Mike. He's said some genuinely disgusting things in his many years on the web, and has a number of beliefs and behaviors that I don't think I can even mention in the video. This guy got banned from Encyclopedia Dramatica, which I genuinely didn't even know was possible. It just makes it all the more astounding that for a few short years in the 2000s, Mike just existed alongside other members of the extended Wikipedia community, without anyone ever knowing what he was soon to become. On August 31st of 2015, Wikipedia editors noticed strange behavior from an account going by the name Orange Moody. The account had been interacting with recently deleted pages, modifying them and on occasion attempting to reintroduce them to Wikipedia. Editors decided to take a closer look, and it was at this point they discovered the single account had only been the tip of the iceberg. Operation Orange Moody, as it came to be called, was a ring of some 380 accounts, some known to be socks, who had for some unknown amount of time been conducting quite possibly the most elaborate Wikipedia scam operation of all time. Unlike wiki experts and other paid editing firms like WikiPR, which offered their services to clients hoping to improve their public image, the Orange Moody operation had developed a system through which they'd actively seek out otherwise innocent parties and convince them to pay for their services. The process generally followed a pattern. First, the Orange Moody accounts would monitor Wikipedia for articles on individuals or businesses that had been recently deleted. In some cases, the accounts would report the article in order to speed up its deletion. Then, an article creation sock account would rebuild the page and make small edits to prepare the article for reconfirmation. Meanwhile, representatives from Orange Moody would reach out to the individual or group whom the article had been about, often posing as a senior Wikipedia editor or admin, and promise them the page would be reinstated, of course for a modest price. Once the individual paid up, the article would be pushed up again, and a series of helper sock accounts would perform tiny, inconsequential edits on the page to give the impression it was active and seeing constant improvement. In many of these cases, Orange Moody would reach out sometime later to the subject of the article and solicit a maintenance fee, described as a small monthly payment of around $30, to ensure the page wouldn't be deleted again. Of course, members of Orange Moody had no way of ensuring this, but to unaware or unsuspecting third parties, the illusion was perfectly airtight. It's unknown how long the Orange Moody ring was active for. The operation took immense care to avoid detection at all costs. But once it was uncovered, a massive wave of bans were carried out over the following days and weeks, and a number of news agencies reported on the event. Sites like Wikipedia can be a very powerful tool in the cause of spreading information and changing public opinions. And as such, there will always be those individuals or groups who would rather see it used for their own gain, and it's unlikely Orange Moody will be the last. And this is where we'll end off for the night. I was honestly surprised by the extensiveness of the long-term abuse page, and the depths to which many of the figures on it had sunk in years gone by. I guess I just assumed that on a site like Wikipedia there wouldn't really be anything to cause drama about. I suppose the thought just never crossed my mind that beneath the surface there was an entire world that operated almost entirely out of the public eye. But people are weird. They can be eccentric, they can be unpredictable, they can certainly be malicious. And in the end, it doesn't really matter where you are or what a particular site is about. People will act any way they see fit, come rain or shine. The best we can do is be prepared for unusual things to happen in the inevitable event that they do. And at least in that regard, I believe the faithful maintainers of Wikipedia have done a damn good job, all things considered. And I believe that's something that we can all be grateful for. Thanks for watching.